joke, but I'm not going to do it. And if you don't know what it is there a mic here? Is there a... Oh, there is a mic here. All right, good. Mic check complete. Okay. Now I can tell my kids I did the joke. My wife thinks it's really great. All right, couple of quick polls before we get started. First of all, my name's Doug. I'm the co-founder of Third Degree. Been here 21 years. Hard to believe. You can see that on some of these shirts that I'll be parading around tonight. Yeah, we'll take a round of applause for that. So, special night tonight, obviously. I'm about to introduce our special guest, but before I do, how many of you have been here before? Oh, wow. Huge percentage tonight. Welcome back. How many of you watched Blown Away? Oh, okay. Also, well, it kind of makes sense. There's a correlation there, right? Well, so obviously we have John Sharvin and MiNHi here tonight. These guys are season 3 contestants that we're lucky enough to con into showing up here in St. Louis. So they fell for it. So let's make them feel like we care tonight, all right? Nice. So I'm going to turn it over to them in just a second. I'm not reading their bios or anything like that. That would put you guys to sleep. Not that they don't have great bios, but we just want to see them make glass, right? Okay, all right. So I'll turn it over. We're going to let them do their demo tonight. As always, as I let them know, I always give this disclaimer. If you guys aren't happy with tonight's performance, we'll give you a full refund. Right? Because you didn't pay anything for this. Okay. But in all seriousness, like the way this place survives these nights is you buy drinks, you buy glass, you support the artists that make the stuff behind you. It's all made here at Third Degree. If you like the idea of having an event here, we do this all the time. So have an event here. All right, with that, John, MiNHi, welcome. And I'll turn it over to them so they get to have all the fun talking to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Doug.
You're welcome.
Ooh, that's my voice.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. I'm MiNHi. It's wonderful to be here. So I was told we would have some pictures up here. Well, I just want to give you guys like a super brief background of myself. I started blowing glass in college. Before I entered college, I was an artist. I was a painter, an illustrator, so I always knew that art was going to be my future, but I didn't know that glass was going to be my future. So when I entered university at Alfred University in Western New York, I found glass, and I actually double majored in glassblowing and metal casting. So some of my early work, which was just up here, is this glass and metal combination. There it is. So this is blown glass inside of these mild steel cages that are torch cut and very textured. And they're adorned with more metal on the inside. Some of them are mirrored. And if you watched the show, if you watched Blown Away, then you know that I lost someone very important in my life. And when you go through something impactful like that, it tends to carry on into your art practice. So I made this huge shift in my art practice after I lost this person. And I started to focus really heavily on more sculptural work. So if we could have the next slide, this is one of the pieces I made on the show, and then another iteration I made after I came back from the show from the 7 Deadly Sins episode. And this whole idea of sculpting flowers became very prevalent in my work. So if we can see the next slide, we can see some of the pieces I have made since I got back home to Seattle after being on the show. So you'll see a little bit of that tonight, some of my flower making, my floral work. And I met John Sharvin while we were on TV. And ever since we met, we've been collaborating and meeting up and doing demonstrations like this tonight. And so we've been striving to kind of push our collaborative work a little bit and enter into a new realm, new themes within our work. So tonight is going to be sort of some of that shift that we've been making within our collaborations.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I will hand it off to John.
Thanks. Hi, I'm John. Nice to meet everybody. So we're gonna go around the room and ask everyone's names, and then, okay. Well, yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, being in St. Louis. So if you guys have watched the show, you know I'm loud and do things like this a whole bunch. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of where I came from as well. I have a very different story than MiNHi does. I started going to school originally for engineering and thought that was going to be a really good idea. You know, because you like build Legos as a kid, you're like, yeah, I want to build crap, you know? And then you get into engineering and you sit at a computer the entire day. It was awful. So I switched to Ohio State and kind of started getting into some glassblowing, got into a glassblowing class and changed my major like the next day. It was immediate, like super addicted, wanted to do this the rest of my life. So the first early career, I focused a lot on, you know, vessel making and stuff like that. And then I got into sculpture. And I started making these faces after taking a couple classes with some people, and I was kind of happy with them. But the reason I'm showing this piece is kind of similar to my work out in the gallery there is I started incorporating a lot of mixed media in my glass, because glass doesn't, you're not able to get like super fine detail that I wanted to achieve in my work, so I started using other medium other than just glass, and that was a big kind of breakthrough in a lot of my work. If we go to the next slide, yeah, it is. So this is kind of more of my current series of work. This was just in a show in Pittsburgh that I did a whole installation of these planets with these little figurines on them and all these miniatures, and it was a really fun way to kind of see my vision more. I focus a lot on childhood nostalgia and finding that like play and fun. It's like not super serious, but there are a lot of it's kind of my escapist realm of space, and it's really fun to like imagine grand ideas that could, you know, happen in space out there. And so kind of gone down this path of making fun, approachable work that is but still has some undertones of seriousness about it. And then the last slide. So this is some of the work that MiNHi and I have been collaborating on over the past year or so-ish, yeah? The piece on the left was, we originally did these pieces at a conservatory in Columbus, Ohio, and we didn't really know, this was like very, very early on collaborating, so we took, I think it was our first, yeah, I think it was actually our first collaboration. So we wanted to make like the tube guys, you know, and put them inside of flowers. That's kind of, we were like, I don't know, we're going to do it. But it was a really fun piece. It turned out really nice. And we got invited to go to Corning Museum of Glass in New York, where we did that spaceship on the right. Again, combining some of these space themes and flower themes. We found the first flower ever to be bloomed in space, which was the zinnia flower. I think it was Apollo, not Apollo. It was one of the space missions. I can't remember off the top of my head. But we wanted to make a life support kind of vessel for that. So that's kind of what we've been doing. It's been really fun. So tonight we're going to make I'm calling it a bunny, MiNHi's calling it a rabbit.
It's a rabbit.
Okay. It's a bunny rabbit, I think it's fine. Yeah, so we have kind of a source image, run up here. This is a loose idea, reference photo. We will not be making exactly this, but working kind of inspired by this. It's the year of the rabbit, right?
Yeah. So as like closing out the year, we thought we would celebrate everything that's happened in this past year by making the animal that is the zodiac, the Chinese zodiac for this year. And if anybody has any pressing questions for us, we can only take a couple before we get started. Anybody? Anyone out there? No one?
We'll also be available after, if you guys want to come find us and talk to us about, I don't know, your favorite brand of cereal or life ambitions or...
So when we were on the show, every single time before we started filming and blowing glass, they would say, "Let's glass blow." So that's what we're going to do right now.
Yeah. Let's glass blow. Yeah, so we're going to do that. We're going to start with a flower.
Here we go.
Hey. toasty hole. Do you want me to start heating this? I can't hear. I can hear what? Yeah, no, I can't wear it on. Why not? Because it hurts my head. I'm just going to point it now, and then I'll talk later. That's fine. It's hot.
Do you guys usually play music at these events?
Yeah. What do you want?
God. Oh. Something. Something easy. That might be the easiest. So I will say we started out by making some parts earlier this morning. We made some arms and some legs and a head. So we made a couple parts. We've been blowing for I think 4 hours today already. So we're just gonna do the exciting parts and putting it all together for you guys.
We're gonna pull a rabbit out of a hat, if you will. So when we start pulling things out and you're wondering where it came from a hat. No, it came from earlier today. So just to give you guys a heads up of what's going on right now, John is adding a little bit of color to what we call a feeder bit. And so essentially, I'm going to make a flower from that feeder bit. We call it a feeder bit because he's gonna feed me tiny bits off of this same piece of molten glass, and that's how I'm going to attach the petals.
So I'm using this steel table up here. We call this the Marver. We use it mainly for shaping the glass. As you see, I kind of roll across it.
Yeah.
You can also use it to help cool down the glass, which is a very important step in the glass blowing process, is controlling where the heat's at. If this is solid, but if it was hollow, the glass would expand wherever it's hottest. So we can use the Marver to kind of control what parts are cooler or hotter, so you can get a nice even, uniform bubble. But we're not doing it on this one. So. Make it small. So we melt all clear glass, and we're going to add the color to it, and that's what MiNHi is working on right now. We can apply color a lot of different ways. We have stuff that's called glass frit. That's where you'll kind of see the funfetti type of mix, like polka dots-esque. We have glass bar, which will give you a very uniform hue of glass over the whole thing. And then we also have glass powder, which is consistency of flour, essentially, and it's just ground up glass that is a certain color. And you apply that to the outside of the clear glass. And if you guys have questions at any point, just yell them out, I guess. Or you guys can just stare at us. That works too, so. So right now, this bit has a base layer of a pink, a flamingo. And then on top of that, we have a dark red color called garnet. Just the color of garnet, if you're familiar with garnet. Also used in water jet cutting and abrasives and useful stone.
So we got a question from the audience. Where do we get the glass powder from? And it's kind of a complicated question. It depends, naturally. So depending on on what color we want. Different companies offer better colors than others depending on the hue or depending on the properties of the glass. But I would say we work primarily, well, there's 3 companies that we purchase from primarily, and that would be Reichenbach, Kugler, and Gaffer. I'm from Seattle, and I'm very fortunate that I can go to the glass color store, and it is like a candy shop for glass makers. It's wonderful.
It's so not fair.
John, do you have the pipes?
Do I what?
Do you have the pipes?
The pipes? Oh, yeah. No. I'll find them. They're somewhere. I don't have them. We had some tubes, some like copper tubes that were out here at one point. Oh, they're right here.
Oh, they're on my bench.
They had them already.
Did you look at that?
Look at that. So MiNHi is using a oxypropane torch. This is a kind of a new addition to the hot shop in the last 10-ish years. I don't really know. And it allows us to get the surface of the glass really hot rather than a more generalized heat that we get in the reheating chambers. You can really focus the heat on it, and the torch flame is like 3,500 degrees or something like that, so it's super hot. Allows you to really focus heat on very certain sections. You kind of paint with the torch on where you want stuff to be hot. That way, the rest of the glass isn't moving just where you want it to be. You
How
ready?
are you looking, John?
I'm hot. You ready?
Looking hot. All right.
I'm feeling hot.
The glass.
Oh, the glass?
How's the glass looking?
The glass is hot.
Not yet?
I'm ready.
All right, I'll take it whenever you're ready.
So right now, as they add this bit, you can see MiNHi's using shears. When the glass is hot, you can cut it. You can cut it with a sharp blade, and then she's got her tweezers, so she can sculpt and shape. So everything they're doing is not with molds; it's actually shaped with these hand tools at the bench. And I will jump in. This is Jess again. I met some of you guys earlier, and I'm from Third Degree. And blowing glass in a new shop where you haven't worked before can be pretty intense. So if they can't get to your questions, you guys can raise your hand, and I can deliver questions to them too.
All right, John.
So we have a question about which materials glass works well with, because MiNHi had mentioned that she worked with metal in the past. So what does glass work well with?
So I have used steel with glass, but I would say when I first started doing that, I had about a 50% success rate. They don't get along that well, and that's because glass will shrink and expand depending on if it's molten, if it's hot, or it's cold. And the same with any material. And what I have found is that copper plays nice. So I have switched to using copper when I want to use metal and glass together. And some people will tell you that it has the same coefficiency, which basically means it expands and shrinks at the same rate, but come to find out that's not actually true. The reason it works well is because copper is very soft, so it just kind of takes on the stress from the glass. So then rather than cracking the glass, the copper will just sort of bend to whatever the glass wants.
There's other metals as well that work pretty well with glass, including gold and silver, but you can really only apply those at a in leaf form, kind of, antique sign making type of thing. So really, really, really thin metal. That tends to work pretty well. Yep.
So we do have an artist here who uses Swarovski crystals, which are also glass-based, and he puts those in. But most hard things won't cooperate well with the glass as it cools. So we're pretty limited in what we can use with it.
Two more, John.
Two more?
Two more.
So if you were here early on, I was talking about how a lot of glass blowing is actually reheating. So you're seeing that John keeps heating up the tip of that to bring it over so that it's nice and malleable for MiNHi to sculpt. But then she also has to keep going back to reheat the piece. Glass is super sensitive to temperature changes, and so if she were to wait too long, especially with all these thin areas in her glass, those would begin to crack and fall off. So she has to keep just the right heat, get it hot enough that it won't crack, but cold enough that it doesn't just melt into a blob, as John continues to sort of serve more fresh glass for her to sculpt with.
All right, last one.
I don't know if she mentioned that little spin move she does. So she's using that force of spinning to elongate that bit before she sculpts it. So that little spin is really deliberate. It's also showy and cool. But most of us glassblowers kind of like dig being showy and cool too.
I can keep this bit hot in the garage if we want. Maybe we want to repair the other one with it.
No, I think we should just repair it when we stick it.
Alright.
Glass is very much about teamwork. It's really, really great when you find a person you work well with. Most of us here at Third Degree are paired up and work with the same one or two people almost every time we work. And almost all of us work with at least one other person when we're working in the hot shop. The things that we do here, like as you see, John has to heat this piece up and bring it for her to sculpt, and she has to keep it hot. And if you imagine one hand doing each job, you run out of hands really quickly. So it's definitely team-based and cooperative, and it's really important to find people who you mesh with and who you work well with. Did I see a hand raising somewhere? I thought I saw somebody wave a hand. Anybody with a question? You guys all watch the show, so you already know all this stuff about glass. This is probably my most glass-educated audience ever. Did Doug already poll you about who's been here before? Who has never been to Third Degree before? How many of you it's your first time? Fantastic. And are you here because you saw Blown Away? Well, as excited as we are to have John and MiNHi, we do this every month. And the third Friday of every month, you can come and see amazing glass being created by local artists as well. You can also learn how to do this here. We do offer classes. Several of our students are here tonight because it's an exciting opportunity to see professional artists working with techniques that we don't see. It's been really fun because the way that we work with the glass is very different depending on where we've learned. And so when you can get an artist who learned somewhere else to come in and share techniques, and then they can look at what we do and learn, it's just a really cooperative sort of community. And glass is a small enough world. There's few enough of us out there making glass that that everybody knows someone. We're all like, 2 degrees apart. All right, so, or 2,000 degrees apart sometimes, but. Yes. How many Kevin Bacons are we from each other? And not very many, I think. All right, so you probably have already heard a little bit about the garage. They talked about how they'd already made pieces and they put those in there. I've been here most of today and seen them making awesome little parts for this piece. It's going to be fantastic. But now it looks like John has started a bubble. I'm not sure what it's for, so he can tell you about that. Maybe.
Unmute. Hit the space bar. Hit the space bar. So I'm starting the body of the bunny. This is going to be kind of the, I guess, the main cake that the decoration's going on, if you want to go that way. So I'm just putting a bubble in this glass to start with, and then we're going to start layering up the glass onto this pipe with all of our color, and then we'll sculpt that into the bottom torso of the bunny and add all of our things we made earlier today to that.
The order of operations is important in glass. So if they had made the body earlier today and tried to put that away, because it's so much larger and has more mass, it's harder to maintain that, to keep it ready, to bring it out and subject it to heat changes than smaller parts are. So by making the smaller parts ahead of time, those are much more likely to survive being just sitting in that oven for the day waiting to be put together. So this piece overall, like they came in and started working this morning and making these parts. So it's a long process, and they've got all of this stuff. And again, it's all, as you see these parts come out, they're super cool, and they're all hand sculpted. You will see it come out, and you'll think, oh, well, that came out of a mold. And I vouch for them. I watch them do it. It is, in fact, hand skills. So, little conference. So the question is there a difference between the glory holes? In fact, there is. So if you look closely, you'll see this one has two sets of doors. It is a larger hole. They're both about the same working temperature, but this one can only open up to that one opening size, and you've got about an extra 3 or 4 inches of width on this one here. That's our biggest hole that we have in the shop right now. We have a larger one, but it's in storage because we don't have anyone working that bad. So when he went in there, that's a great question. So the question was, what are those? So you can see they're reheating in the little ovens over here, the glory holes. But those are our melt tanks. And those each hold a crucible with about 300 pounds of clear molten glass. That glass sits at that temperature all the time. It's about 2,000 degrees. And we can't turn them off. Because if you turn off the furnace with glass in it and that glass cools, like we said, glass doesn't like many other things, including the crucible. So as the glass shrinks, it's going to push and pull on that crucible and break it. So we don't really want that to happen. So we pay our gas bill and keep that running all the time. The glory holes we can turn off. So that's kind of nice. At least we don't have to have all of this heat running all the time. But yeah, so when you saw John go into there, he went in with a small bubble and he came out with a bigger bubble, right? So when we go in there, we're actually taking material out versus when we go into the other ones, if we're doing it right, the only thing we're taking out is more heat. So again, John is now applying color. He's got the scoops there, and he's just getting a nice even coating all the way around the piece, and then melting it in. Because as he rolls it in, it's going to be a really kind of sandy, bumpy texture. And then when he goes in to reheat it, it'll smooth that surface. It'll melt it all in and get it nice and uniform. It's also constantly rotating. Rotation is critical. Because if you stop rotating, gravity takes over. The more liquidy and molten the glass is, the faster you've got to turn it to keep it from falling on the floor. So you'll see as they're working, it's all rotation. So he has to rotate it, obviously, to get the glass all the way around, but he has to keep rotating. Even as he comes out, he has to keep rotating. Because if he stops that rotation, either the piece will bend in half, or if it's hot enough, the piece will fall on the floor. Now, if you look at our floor too closely, you might notice there's a few little spots and warts and pocks, because we're a teaching studio. And sometimes you stop turning and you learn a little bit and the floor gets a new mark.
I dropped glass on the floor today.
I wasn't gonna call you out.
Oh, you can throw me under the
Okay.
bus. It's fine.
So yeah, John took a gather, and so I told him he had to sign it. It's right over there. It's a fresh-looking one. He popped 2 pieces of concrete, 2 little bits of concrete. So
It's that
I will
fresh
always
one.
know. Every time I walk there, I'll have like a warm glow and think about John. So
I mean, you gotta leave your mark in the studio, you know, right?
it's really. I think it would be cool, like at theaters. You know, they sign the walls backstage. I think everyone who drops glass should be signing those. Like we should have a record of everyone who has spilled glass in our shop, because it's at this point it's a lot of really skilled glass blowers who've dropped glass here.
Low light. Yep. Keep going, keep going.
Again, team sport. This would be hard to do solo.
Okay. Just a normal strip, you think? Just a normal strip? I could do a gather, like full gather.
So I have a question about, were you spoiled working in the Netflix hot shop? Was it like luxury compared to other shops that you've worked in? How was your experience there?
What's the opposite of luxury?
This studio is a very nice studio. I'll say that. Yes, this is a very, very good studio, especially in comparison.
But with that said, going to a new studio, it always takes a little bit of adjustment to get used to it.
Yeah. So I'll say on the studio of Blown Away, it's more of a set, you know, like the whole classic Wild Western movies where it's just the facade of something. Think in the terms of that. You know, it's like there's a lot of cardboard and foam.
It's very believable, though. We didn't even know it for
No.
a majority of the season.
I had to go like put my finger in like this one foam brick. I was like, there's no way that's foam, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they didn't have a bar chopper. So normally if you want to chop up these long rods of color, you would chop it with this very specific tool on a piece of cobalt, really hard metal. And what they had was a scoring tool, and then they were like, and then you just take it to a piece of metal and smack it. I was like, okay, that'll work. So I go to do that, and I walk up to what I thought was a metal, like stairs or something, and I went on it, and it went thud. They're like, oh yeah, that's styrofoam. So, oh, okay, well that's not gonna work.
Light strip?
So the thing about the Netflix shop is it wasn't like, that's not a repurposed glass factory or anything.
We're gonna fit,
that was
right?
built specifically for the show. So it's not
that's all
like
we got.
it was a functioning hot shop that existed before Blown Away existed.
Sorry.
So it's a little different. Whereas we started as a hot shop and have always been a hot shop. So it's very authentic here. You're getting the real thing. That's a great question. The question is, how hot are the ovens? So we have lots of different things that we get hot in here, and they're all at different levels. So the oven that he's coming out of right now with that big old gob of glass, that's at 2,050 degrees right now, or 2,080. We might have it up at 2,080. So when you bake cookies at home, that's at about 375 degrees. And you know how hot that oven is if somebody opens it, right? So we're talking like 3 times that much heat. So that is 2,000. And then when they put this away, they'll go into one of those big ovens on the side over there, back behind that lovely crowd. And those sit right about 1,000. They sit at 950 degrees. 950 degrees is what we consider cold. The glass has stopped moving. It's cold enough that it won't change shape anymore, but it's hot enough that it won't break. Because like we've talked about, if the glass gets too cold, it will shatter. So that's a stable temperature. So we've got 2,000 degrees and 1,000 degrees. And then the glory hole where we're reheating it, that one is usually around like maybe 2,200. It's a little hotter than the melt tank because we want to be able to really get the glass moving in there. But it is adjustable. If we're making goblets, we won't make it nearly as hot as if we're making solid sculptures. So we can tune it by how much air is going in. Those are natural gas and forced air. And so depending on how much air is going in there, we can set a workable temperature that does what we need it to do.
I did 3.
So, John and MiNHi, how heavy is that glass right now?
Okay, so I don't really know, but so if you want to know how heavy it is, glass is heavier than water or milk. So you could go home and take a broom handle and try to pick up your gallon of milk with it and then turn it, and that's 8 pounds. So, yeah, it's heavy. It feels heavy, but there's probably only like, I don't know, 10 pounds of 10, 15 pounds of glass on there. I don't know. But it weighs like 30, 40, 50.
It's all about leverage. So leverage is really important. It's math and leverage. So if you go back to like basic machines, right? The lever is a basic machine. And where is your fulcrum? So when they're holding that, right now MiNHi's at the very back, right? So all the weight is sitting on that yoke.
Then it never
So
leaves.
she's got that yoke slid way forward,
that.
so she's got control at the back because of the lever. And you'll see when she comes out, she'll slide her hand forward and hold it as far forward as she can, because the further forward she is, the more leverage she gets. So it can be heavier or lighter, even though it's always the same amount of glass. It can be heavier or lighter depending on where you're holding it.
I'm probably gonna stop talking.
So that's the critical reason why we need a pipe cooler. So in the middle, you might have seen them go in and cool off the pipe on that little rack in the middle. Because if we can't slide our hand forward, we're dealing with what feels like at least twice the weight.
Yeah, it's very bouncy. I can kind of go over the garage with you real quick.
All right, I have 2 questions for you guys. First is, how did you get on the show? What was the process of getting into Blown Away? And then the second question is, when you're traveling to another studio, do you bring your own tools, or do you anticipate everything being ready for you?
Well, to answer the first question, there was an application process, and they asked us like 100 questions, something crazy like that. So many questions. And one of the questions was like, what do you think your friends say about you behind your back? Actually. And then the very last part of the application was submitting a 3-minute long video. What I'll say about myself is that I spent time to really try to show who I was on that video. Meanwhile, John Sharvin sends a 3-minute long video, one take, unedited, in the back of the shop that he worked at, probably all sweaty and salty. And so I can't tell you how they choose people, because it's clearly not necessarily how polished your application is, but personality probably. I think we can all agree, though, that John Sharvin has a very unique personality.
No.
And then the second question, you know, I was just thinking about this morning, that I think it would be really fun to make a little video to talk about what it's like to travel with your glass blowing tools. Can you imagine being TSA and opening up my bag and being like, here's a knife, and here's a knife, and we got like 10 bags full of white powder. What is this?
Yeah, go through TSA with this. You're like, no, I swear it's not drugs, I swear. And they're like, I don't know about that. You're like, you okay with this?
Yeah.
Especially when you have white, they're just like, yeah.
Probably. I need to figure out.
Honestly, my experience with TSA has been really nice. You start talking to them, and they're like, oh, really? Wait, tell me more. You're a glass blower? Like, what the hell? Like, it's also really fun to watch your glass art go through the TSA scanner. That's a really entertaining one. I made a walrus out in Seattle, and carried it on with me back to Seattle. I'm to Pittsburgh, and it was just really funny watching this walrus go through the I'm gonna try to find a bigger pair of jacks and
So the first question is for you guys, which is how much pressure are you applying when you blow the glass?
do you
So
have, any other corks?
it really depends on how hot the glass is.
We just need a slightly
So when you
bigger-
first start learning to blow glass, generally speaking, people are a little afraid to get the glass hot. So if you're blowing, for someone who's new to glass blowing, you're blowing really hard until you want to pass out. If you're blowing for someone who is seasoned, then you really are barely blowing at all. If you could imagine like blowing an eyelash off of the whiskers of your kitten. That's how hard we blow. Really not very hard. But then as the glass cools, I'll take a door, we'll start to blow a little bit harder.
Do you want me to heat so you can put a neckline in?
It is all about
Let's shape
heat.
it a little.
So the hotter it is, the softer it is. And when you're first starting out, you can't manage the glass that soft. And so you do. You pop your ears, you turn red, you're like... And that's how the hot shop sounds in a class, because everybody's blowing and nothing's happening. And as you learn to manage the heat and keep that rotation nice and steady and keep everything on center, then you really don't have to work hardly at all. So, so it's just a matter of
Wanna do
practice,
our
really.
assistant?
Now, the other question was about did we lose equipment in the flood? So I don't know if did they talk about that tonight at all, or do you just know about it? So we flooded last year. We had a freak storm 2 in a row. It was like a Tuesday and then a Thursday. I can't remember exactly, but there's a huge storm. All the debris blocked up all of the drains, and then we had another one. And it was like we live in the neighborhood, and we were home, and my kids were walking outside, and it was like being in the pool. They were that wet. Like as soon as they stepped out, it was solid water, and it rained, and so it pooled up. And I never had noticed that we're at the low spot, but on Delmar, there's like a dip, and it's subtle, but it's enough that all the water channeled straight into third degree, came through the doors, and we had a river that was about knee high that flowed through the studio, knocked over all of our pedestals, came into the shop. It did take out quite a bit of equipment. So as you guys are leaving this evening, you can see a remnant of it. And our entryway, there's 2 black leather chairs, and in between them, there's a crucible. I told you the crucible is in those melt tanks and holds 300 pounds of clear glass. Well, there's about 200 pounds of clear glass that was in there during the flood when it flooded the furnace. And there's actually on the front of this, I think we have a line. There's like a little red line that was where the water was. So fortunately, the building itself is pretty fireproof, which is also pretty waterproof. So the building did great because we could really just power wash everything and get right back to it because it's all concrete and cinder blocks. But the equipment, we did have to rebuild a couple of our kilns. A lot of them stand up high, which was good, and kept them out of harm's way. But we did have to rebuild one of our melt tanks and a few of our kilns in the back as well. We lost a lot of glass. Our artists lost a lot of glass because those are wooden pedestals and they float and then they tip when the water comes through. So that was a lot. All right, so now exciting things are happening, and I'm missing them talking about us. So they're starting the sculpting. So MiNHi's got a really high-tech tool there. It's a pad of newspaper. That's as close as we get to working with our hands and sculpting the glass. So we fold up the newspaper into layers. Layers are very insulating. You know, insulation is all about double pane windows, triple pane windows. The more layers you have, the better the insulation. So we have there's like 12 layers of newspaper with water in between to insulate it so that we can really use that pad to grip and sculpt. So she's setting up the basic shape of the rabbit here. and they're having a little consultation, communication is really important. You want all of your assistants, and in this case, it's a collaborative piece. So they're probably talking about how do you want to do it as well as how it's going to be done. So one of the big tools, I think John was talking about it earlier, is that hand torch. It's really, really useful. So back in if you look at older glass, it's really amazing to me because they didn't have all the tools that we have to be able to spot heat. They would just get everything hot and somehow still manage to sculpt it, which is amazing. So right now, she's just heating one area that she can sort of start zooming in and sculpting that and adding detail to. So the question was, why do we need to wipe it? So it's not really just cleaning it. I know it looks like a cleaning pad, right? So what she's doing is she's changing the shape. So if you imagine you've got a piece of Play-Doh and you want to change the shape, you can just grab it with your hands, right? And you can squeeze it and it'll change the shape. We can't grab the glass because it's so hot. So it's kind of like a glove. She's using that not to, and as she moves it around, she's doing that so that it won't get too hot in one space. Because what can happen with that paper is if it stays in one spot for too long, it can like catch on fire. And so as she moves it, she spreads the heat around, and she doesn't leave any marks from the pad burning on her piece. So that movement is really keeping it from sticking or from overheating. So now John's adding a little air, and you can see that spot where she heated. It's really hard because cameras are not as good as your eyes, and when something is that hot and glowing, the camera makes it really hard to see it. But that spot she preheated is starting to bulge out a little bit as she blows.
What? Is that too long? No. I mean, we can always go inside.
So I have a question about the colors. So the glass is hot right now, and it looks like it's lots of different colors. So if you guys can kind of address what the colors are that you're using and how those colors change and why they're all different.
I'm sorry, could I have a repeat of that question?
So the question was about color. Like, we know you put color on there, but right now it looks like it's lots of different colors. And as you put that torch on, it changes color. So what's happening with color?
So what I always like to tell people who are learning glass and are kind of new to it is that glass color is different than maybe an experience you might have had with paint. It doesn't mix like watercolor paint does or acrylic paint does. It involves a ton of chemistry. So anything can change the way that the color appears, such as heat. Two colors touching will oftentimes turn it black, or sometimes it'll make one color crawl, and it does this really crazy spotty effect. So that's all chemistry. So what we've done is we have separated our colors with a layer of clear to minimize the amount that the colors chemically react with one another. And then you'll see, as I torch, you're seeing a combination of the heat, but also the color is actually changing as it gets hot. Not all colors do that. A flash and we'll puff.
So does that heat affect the final color of the piece, the fact that you heated that spot?
Sometimes. So a really great example that I like to use is John's moons. On the craters, you'll see that there's sort of like this halo of color, and that's from the torch. Sometimes if you flash in the reheating chamber, it'll bring the color back to its original state. So it really just depends on how we treat the glass. And even though I've been blowing glass for a very long time, I still am always learning something new about colors, or there's a color combination I've never used before, and so oftentimes I will test it. you might see a glass blower like roll up a piece of color and then squish it and then throw it on the ground and then they let it cool. And that way they can see what the glass does before they commit to using it in their piece that takes them all day long to make, or sometimes longer. So John and I actually made a smaller version of this rabbit at my little studio in Seattle so that we could test the colors that we wanted to try. And that's really helpful. So that's part of what makes the glass making process expensive, is because we don't always know what we're gonna get. And you can spend a long time working on something just to find that the color's not right, or it did something that you didn't expect. But we're not actually glass blowers, right, John? We're mad scientists.
We're mad scientists, yeah.
Pseudoscience.
Pseudoscience. You want to take this? Yeah.
So this seems a great time to remind you that both John and MiNHi have work available in our gallery. There's some really unique stuff that you will not see here outside of while they are visiting us.
On the bottom, yeah.
So John's got some cool planetary pieces. One of them is a light that's super awesome and like this glowing, exploding planet look. They've also got some smaller pieces. So
I'm going to be outside of the bench.
Definitely encourage you to browse the gallery and check out some of their work.
That's good. That's good.
So they are here with us for a week. They'll be doing a workshop with some of our local artists, which we're super excited about. I talked a little earlier about that sharing knowledge is really, it's how we grow and how we develop, is by having these artists come in and teach our artists new techniques, new ideas, new ways of working. And we are all mad scientists. I mean, we're all like trying to figure something out. We're trying to find that new thing, that unique thing that we can do with glass that's exciting and nobody's ever seen it before. And it requires a lot of experimentation. So like some of our artists pile like 7 or 8 colors on top of each other on a piece. And they may not put that clear layer between because they want to see just what happens when you throw everything in the pot, you know? And some of our artists are super obsessed with like form, and they're experimenting with form and how thin can you get the glass and how many connections can you make before, you know, it falls apart. And there's just so many things that you can experiment with as you're creating. It's a really, really unique material. But as you look through the gallery, in addition to John and MiNHi's work, everything out there is made by local artists. So as you shop out there, you're supporting us. Most of the people you see here tonight in third-degree shirts here in the Hot Shop are artists. Some of us, like myself, have been working over 20 years in the material. Some of us have been working under a year. And we have a very broad range here at the studio. It's a fun place to work in glass because, again, that idea sharing happens a lot. So you're seeing a lot of use of that torch.
Yep.
When you're sculpting glass, that's something you're going to see a lot. If you go on YouTube and you look, you can see so many amazing things. I'm kind of jealous of the newer students because when I started blowing glass in the 90s, there wasn't YouTube for me to go and watch, you know, people in Venice and people in Seattle and people in North Carolina blowing glass on a live stream and learning from so many different places. So it's really exciting. It's an exciting time to learn anything really because of that knowledge that's out there. But I encourage you, beyond just Blown Away, there's so many great resources about glass. You've heard of the Corning Museum of Glass because they offer the prize for the Blown Away show. If you ever get a chance to go to the Corning Museum of Glass, you should. It's quite amazing. Their collection is beautiful. You can really see the form starting to, you can see like the haunch sort of developing there, and the form of the bunny is really starting to take shape. But the Corning Museum is wonderful. So if you're ever, you know, driving through upstate New York, you should totally stop by. But in the meantime, our gallery, they got nothing on us. We've got some amazing work that you will not find anywhere else in the world.
You're gonna do it on this move? Okay.
So at this point, it's pretty intense, and that glass, as she gets more and more detail in it, she has to manage her heat more and more carefully because she doesn't want to melt out anything that she's already done. Also, the thinner the glass is, as she blows it out, it gets a little thinner, and so it reacts more quickly to the heat. So a lot of times, these pieces will be deceptively heavy because the thicker the glass is, the more manageable. It's heavier, it's harder to lift, but it's easier to manage. So most of us around here have really big forearms because we're turning really heavy glass.
Joe.
Because if it's thin, it gets hot fast and it gets cold fast, and you just don't have time to work with it.
Am I heating?
So they got more glass than it
Am I heating?
intrinsically needs to make that shape.
Okay.
But it also means you're really tired at the end of the day because it's, again, it comes back to that leverage.
This needs to come this way a little bit more, right? I think so. No. Yourself?
So I'll tell you guys a little bit more about Third Degree since you're here. Well, we've gotcha. So we've been here for 21 years. We just celebrated our 21st in October. And we are not really a factory. We're a public access studio, which means we're a place where you can come and learn about glass and have experiences with glass and make things, purchase things, view things, see things, experience things. So it's a really, like, whatever it is that you want to know about glass in an artistic way, we've got somebody probably doing that. We offer classes. We offer corporate events. If you want to do a team building, we've got things for that. So there's a lot that you can do here at Third Degree to get more involved with glass. We also do sometimes get to have these really fun visiting artists come in and do demonstrations. Our website is a great place to keep track of all that information. You can also follow us on social. Now, I will remind you that the piece that John and MiNHi are making right now will be raffled off at the end of the demonstration. If you don't have a ticket yet, you've got a couple of ways you can get one. If you purchase a drink at the bar, they will get you a ticket. You can put it in the bin and enter. If you take a picture or a video and share on social media, and you just show us your phone, we can get you a ticket as well to enter. So those are your ways of getting the chance to take this bunny home. It's going to be one of a kind because John and MiNHi don't work together all the time. They don't have a body of work that is theirs. It's a collaborative piece where they're both adding elements of their own sculpting and their own ideas into this piece. So it's a really cool and unique thing. So have another drink and share us, and we will hook you up with more tickets. How you guys doing? It's going well? So this is about the piece, you know, we're like getting close to an hour in, starting to feel a little like, okay, all right, this is happening.
It's gonna get interesting really quickly as soon as we get like the base form of it.
So once they start adding these parts, you're going to see all these beautiful pieces that they made earlier start to come in, and really the detail level is really lovely on these pieces.
Flip.
So the question is, are the blades that they're using something they brought, or are those our tools? Right now, I believe John is working with one of his. It's called a tagliole or a tag. We do have those, but sculptors are really particular about their tools. Because
very,
and it's like, it's so funny because it's like that butter knife is not round enough. I need a real butter knife. And you're like, okay, well, try to find you a real butter knife. And a lot of our tools are like things that, you know, we might use a fork, and we want a fork that the tines are this far apart, and so we bring our own. Again, that's why TSA loves a glass blower, because we got all kinds of weird stuff in there that we're sculpting with. But yeah, so if you guys look on the, I guess your right side of the studio here, you can kind of see a tool wall with a nice rainbow background there. And those are our shop tools.
Oh, no, we need to
so
flatten it.
all of our classes,
Oh, no, we
anything
know
that
we
you come
flatten
in,
it
all of our rentals.
Put the feet on.
So
Okay.
we provide a basic set of tools. So those are the shop tools, and that's what we have.
Hey, Gavin,
so most people who
can we
come
turn
in
the hole
are
down
going to
then
bring
to
at least
that,
a
like,
basic set of their own things,
hole
and sculptors in particular,
Two-ish from the bottom. I'll let you know if it's too
they
cold.
like what they like. All right, so it looks like they're getting ready to take something out of the garage. You can
Also,
see
this is the way the bunny's gonna go, if that makes more sense now. Okay. Right behind you.
yeah, sometimes the orientation can be strange because they'll be making it kind of upside down. Like right now, his neck, his head is already in the box and made.
Okay.
So his neck is attached to the pipe.
Okay.
So that's kind of your orientation if you're not seeing it yet. I make chickens sometimes, and nobody believes it's a chicken until that one little spark where, you know, I hold it the right direction. It's like, oh,
You
it
wanna
really is a chicken. Like, you don't see it until it's the right angle.
What?
Do you want to stick them, or are you bringing them?
I'm bringing it.
We could have someone bring it. Ah! Okay.
So as you get towards the end of a larger piece like this, your team
Or you could
often
flash and I
grows.
can bring it. Does that sound good?
So while it's perfectly fine for two people to
Can you grab
do
this
the
real quick?
beginning parts, as you get further along, more hands
Torch, I
help.
bring.
So you'll start to
stick.
see a lot of third degree people start to jump in here. So
I think
Gavin
that
has
makes the most
taken
sense.
over, and he's going to keep that piece warm. So his job right now, Gavin's our new studio director. He's awesome. And he's got quite a few years of gaffing experience. Gaffers, you guys remember what a gaffer is from Netflix, right? That's the person in charge. So being the gaffer means you're in control. He's not the gaffer right now. It's still, even though he's taken the piece, it's still their piece. But we often have to rely on other people's
I can also
hands.
torch it
So-
at that bench as well.
Right now, Gavin's going to keep it warm, so both of
Okay.
them are available to place these pieces really precisely. It's hard if you're holding the pipe to also grab the piece and put it in exactly the right spot so that it looks like the ear grew there and didn't like get put there by a young person sculpting with Play-Doh. So you can see MiNHi's got a tool in her hands that is a little grabber. It's like scissors, but it's got like a little fork on the end, and she's heating it up.
Okay.
So if she were to take a cold piece of metal, it's like tongs, kind of. But
You
if she
can
were to
keep
take
that
a
door
cold
open.
piece of metal and grab the glass would be very unhappy. It's like cold toes under the covers touching your nice warm leg. Not cool. The glass gets really grumpy. So as John brings this piece over, he's bringing her, I believe, a leg. She's preheated that grabber so that she can grab it and place it precisely where she wants it. And as she holds it with that metal, she's not chilling it. So she uses a torch to heat up both sides, the side she's placing and the side it's going into. And then she can use those little tongs to kind of press it in to the right spot. And now right away, Gavin needs to go and flash that because that piece came out of the oven and it immediately started to cool down. So now it gets really challenging because heat management is really critical. Heat management is color and heat management. Those are the two things that, like, once you've got past the basics, those are the things that you learn forever. Like, you just get better at them, but, you know, even 20 years in, I'm still learning about color and heat management. And I would guess pretty much any glass blower you talk to is going to say that. Those are the two things that you're just always working on. So they're going to manage this heat. They're going to keep the piece, the whole body of the piece, as well as each attachment has to remain in that comfort zone, which for the glass is usually, like I said, 950 degrees, which is where we put the pieces away, is, quote, cold. There's a safety range down to about 800, where the glass is still going to be fine. If it drops below that, it's going to crack. If it goes up over about 1200 degrees, it's going to start to move. So they're trying to stay in that sweet spot.
Okay.
So there's a question about how long it takes to change temperature. How long does it take to drop from that temperature? And that varies dramatically because it depends on the thickness of the glass. It's about heat mass is a thing. So it's the mass. So if I have a solid piece of glass, it might take it 15 minutes really to cool down to like something that I could touch. If I have a thin piece of glass, I can touch it in about 30 seconds. So that it depends, and the glass, it doesn't transfer heat very well. It's sort of insulating. And so it's all going to kind of stay that heat for a while. And so the thicker it is, the longer it just holds on to that heat. But generally, we get about 30 seconds tops before we've got to flash it again. If we're out of the hole for a minute, we start to get itchy. Because we know the glass, no matter how thick it is, we know it's really starting to get stressed. The surface is getting really chilly. Sometimes we do it on purpose. Sometimes we'll actually take the glass, and I know you've seen this because I think John might have done it on the show, where he deliberately put the glass in the water and shocked it. So there's times that we do that, and then we go back and reheat it and heal it. But in those cases, we're just shocking the surface, and the inside is still structurally sound. But yeah, that temperature management, that finding a way to keep the glass happy in that comfort zone, you know, again, it's kind of like, you know, you got one leg out of the blankets and one leg in to try to maintain the temperature the right way. Sometimes we're flashing half the piece into the furnace so that one part of it doesn't get too hot, or we're hitting the back of it with a torch, but not the front, so that we're maintaining the right temperature at each part. So MiNHi's getting that tucked into just the right spot.
Those look good.
Did you guys show them your photo or your reference image? I guess it's not a photo. Okay. So yeah, you guys saw then the bunny and the flowers. He's kind of sitting forward a little bit, but perky ears.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to steal that. Just bring it back.
What do you make it?
Tail.
So right now, John's got a fresh gather of glass. This is not pre-made. So this is a combination. They're adding all the parts, but this particular part wasn't pre-made. So he's working on the tail right now. So he took a fresh gather of glass. Anytime we go in, again, it's called a gather. He took a fresh gather of glass, and he's applying color onto the surface of that right now. So I have a question from the audience for you guys. Do you keep in touch with any of the other competitors from the show?
Yeah. Got it.
John,
Huh?
are you still in contact with other competitors from the show?
Yes, yeah. Yes. Now you can hear me. Yeah, we still talk, both of us still talk to a lot of the other contestants from the show, including other seasons. MiNHi and I actually just got back from Belgium, where we visited John Moran. He's got a studio over in Ghent, Belgium. We did a little glass blowing with him and Elliot Walker from season 2, and we still see Trenton and Grace and Dan Friday and Claire Kelly. Yeah, it's a small community. We're all very, very good friends. Yeah. I don't know why I'm hating that. I shouldn't have been hating that.
And again, there's not a lot of us, right? So pretty much any studio you go to, you're probably going to find somebody that is working or has worked in that studio who you have worked with before. Because we move around a lot. We're maybe a little bit naturally nomadic. You have to love fire and also like have a little bit of wanderlust, I think, to be a glass blower. Because traveling is so beneficial, and most successful glass blowers really have gone to all these different studios and picked up as much knowledge as they could from other people.
Yeah, we'll do it all
So we
over,
kind of
and I'm
collect
just
each other a little bit.
Are we gonna do a ponytail, or we're gonna do
The question was if I traveled. I have traveled some, and then I had children. And those of you who are parents know. So I've learned a lot of other things.
All right.
A whole lot of other things, having children. But yes, I have traveled. I've blown glass in Seattle. I have gone to conferences in Australia, in Japan. So I have been around a little bit. Not as much in the last 10 years, but in my first 10 years, I traveled and collected a lot. So you just saw MiNHi took a gather, and then she pulled all that glass off the end. So what she was doing was she was creating a really thin skin on the glass. She didn't want it to have a whole bunch of clear glass over her color. She wanted just a little bit. So, Tom, you could probably, okay.
Yeah.
So if she'd taken that gather and she'd put the color on with all that clear there, she'd get a very different look. Because the color, I don't know if you guys remember the baby, the wood baby had a really dark head and a really light body, right? Because the color acted different on a solid piece of glass and on a blown piece of glass. And colors like that. Again, that's why we're always learning about color. So she's trying to kind of like manage how much clear there is between her layers of color. And also just, you know, the bulk of glass and where the clear is in relation to the color. And 100 other balancing acts. But so that stripping off that clear and making as much of that clear glass that she added come off of there and keeping her color layers nice and close. Like the bologna layer is really close to the cheese layer. You don't have a lot of lettuce and tomatoes in between. You want them like right there. So I talk a lot about most of the glass you see in the gallery is actually clear glass with a little bit of color in a sandwich. So we sandwich it because clear glass is easier to work with and it's cheaper and it's stronger. So protecting our color glass with clear, sandwiching it, is usually a really good idea. That doesn't always work. Some techniques require the color on the surface, some techniques require the color on the interior. But I would say 80% of the work that you see in a glass gallery is going to be, even though you think that's a really lovely red vase, it's a really lovely clear vase with about maybe 10% layer of red, like butter on the toast, like peanut butter on the sandwich. It's just on one part of it.
Oh, yeah. How do you look?
How are we doing?
Not even close.
Any more questions? Anybody out there curious about anything I can tell them? So there's a piece in there that has multiple layers, and if it's one of the pieces I'm thinking of, what we do in those cases, so it's kind of like a distinct layer inside of a layer inside of a layer. So what she just did, we did the opposite for that. So instead of stripping off all that clear, you leave clear in between. You're using transparent colors, so you see through each layer to the layer underneath it. And so it's a gather of clear and then color, and then a thicker clear and then a little color, and then a thicker clear and then a little color. But because they're transparent colors, you see all the way through to the base. And that's a very traditional technique for working with glass. And they're always really thick pieces. So if you were to inflate that from the center, it would all eventually blend into probably a purpley color. But by leaving it thick, you get those nice striations and layers. But that's exactly what it is. It's a layer of clear, and then rolling it in the powder, and then a layer of clear, and then rolling it in the powder. All right. So John's using one of the very specific tools that glassblowers use. When he cut that, he used the diamond shears, which I held up earlier as the torture device that the TSA likes most that we use. They're really cool because they cut to a point. When MiNHi was making the flower earlier, she was using straight shears. It cut in a line, and the bit sort of tapered to a point, but it also flattened. In this case, for the tail, they didn't want it to really flatten, and so they're using a different kind of shear. So it cuts to a single point instead of cutting in a line. And so we've got two different ways of cutting those bits. A bit is anything that we take. An additional piece of glass that we add on is a bit.
50 minutes.
And how we cut it affects how that's going to look ultimately. So that line would leave a line on the tail, whereas that point almost disappears when they cut down to a point like that.
John's? Yeah.
What are you making? There's a
Yeah.
conversation, and it's like they're speaking Greek.
Yeah, I think
I don't know what it is. Sleepy,
a sleepy punny.
a sleepy punny. That's
Sleepy.
not a crown punny, not a cross punny.
sleepy.
A sleepy bunny or a sleepy punty?
Sleepy punty.
A sleepy pun. Okay, this is new. See, this is why you travel. I don't know what a sleepy punny is, so I won't be able to tell you until they tell me. But after today, I'll always know.
Oh, it gets really creepy.
So
Especially with the
MiNHi's got a
arms on
blowpipe.
and shit.
She just blew and popped that bubble.
You want
So
a
what she
flash?
has effectively right now is a ring of glass on the end of her pipe.
Are we punting like here or on the leg?
So
like,
John is using
You know
his
what I
own
mean.
torso to try to figure out where that punty is going to go.
We're punting in the sweet spot.
Oh, the punty.
Butthole.
So you guys, again, I'm just relying on you to be so educated because you've watched Blown Away. So you know a punty is the transfer point where we go from being on the blowpipe to holding it from the other side and being able to complete the piece on the punty. Sometimes it's the most dangerous part, right? So the pieces that you saw fall, mostly they fall during the punty or after the punty. It's rare for us to drop a piece before the punty. But the punty is a delicate connection that is meant to break off. And anything that's meant to break will sometimes break at the wrong time.
see where.
It's just doing its job, but not when it's supposed to.
right here.
So
Alright. We're gonna get
I think
on
it was
there.
last month. It might have been, yeah, I think it was
Let's,
last
like,
month.
Smash it.
I had a piece on a punty. It was a pig stein.
Seal
It's
it.
a pig and a stein.
Okay. Like side to side.
And the punty did its job
Slightly narrow, not super
about 5 minutes
Okay.
before it was supposed to. And it happens. And as a glassblower, you learn to let that go and make another one. But this sleepy punny, maybe there's a trick to the sleepy punny. It's sleepy and it only wakes up when it's time to break off. I don't know.
So we're actually referencing John Moran.
stop.
Did he make sleepy punnies? I don't remember it.
His nickname is Sleepy.
Oh, it's a John punny then. But it
John
could be a John
punny.
punny because John's
Yeah.
here. And we have a John here.
The other John.
The other John.
The
Wait,
other John. Yes.
John Sleepy Moran.
We always debate about who the other John is, but I think it's all circumstantial, isn't it?
So what kind of punty does John like?
So John Moran makes this punty where the cold core is a little bit longer than the second gather, so that when that starts cracking, then we know we have a problem. So it's like a safety. Not necessary, but it's kind of nice. I had never seen anybody else do it before.
So it's kind of a canary in the coal mine that lets you know what's happening.
It's the canary.
It's a little indicator.
Exactly.
So it's kind of got a safety light, right? So she's saying that she's got a gather
Butthole.
on this that goes
Butthole.
further back
Or a little hot.
than her actual gather for the punty is. So it's going to
Yeah.
be a little bit colder than the actual part that connects to the piece. So instead of everything breaking, they'll get an indicator because a piece of the back will break first because it's a little bit colder and further back. So they'll know something's up and they'll know they need to give that a little bit more torch, a little bit more heat, a longer flash. So it's an indicator.
Bench maintenance. So MiNHi doesn't
Did
get
they
angry
just poke
at
a hole in
me.
his bottom? And why? Why, yes, they did. We all have, no. Hold on. That's a different conversation. So, glass, when it is completely enclosed and it heats up, there's air in there, and the air is going to create pressure. And that pressure will change the shape. So, if you put a balloon in the freezer, it shrinks, and when you bring it back out, it stretches. And with a balloon, it's elastic, and so it'll keep going back to the same shape. Glass won't do that. It'll grow and then shrink and be blobby and weird forever. So when we put a hole in it, we've got a place where it can breathe in and out, and that pressure won't build up. So there won't be any gases pushing that bunny and making him chubby or skinny as it goes in and out of the heat, because we're going to constantly change the temperature, like going in and out of the freezer with the balloon. but we're going in and out of a really hot furnace. And so if it were sealed, when they punty this up, if it were sealed and then they put his head on, it would create a closed bubble, a balloon with a knot in it. And once you've tied it off, the air can't get out, and it will ruin the shape. So you have a release for that pressure. Or there's some completely other reason they put a hole in it, and they can fill me in on that. But right now they're in the, I could say anything probably.
Oh,
yeah, I could definitely.
Like,
they're in the moment. So when you get to the punty, that is the most sort of like, you've got to be absolutely focused. In glass in general, you got to be pretty focused. But the punty, you really want to know like exactly how long it's been out, exactly what it's doing. So now the other thing is, so when MiNHi took that gather, she blew a bubble and she popped it. So she's got basically an air way that goes through that. If you think about it, it's like the pipe now continues a little bit longer, but the last bit of it is glass. So if they put it over that hole, they've got a way for the air to get out, and also a way that they could put more air in, technically.
Thank you.
Even all it takes is the tiniest little pinhole for the air to move through.
Yeah. Let's do one more flash. Flash.
If you were in our experience making ornaments this evening with us at the beginning of the night, and you do not currently have your phone in your pocket, it may be at the front desk. So I have just been told that someone in the experience did leave without their phone. We do have it for you. As soon as you get it, you should share us on social media, and we'll give you a raffle ticket. All right, so here we go. MiNHi has brought the Sleepy Punny, and they've attached it. And now John's going to make sure everything is nice and sealed and attached. He's also creating a nice crisp line. That crisp line for it to break off of is really important. If it's kind of loose and wavy, the crack when it breaks off could go anywhere. If you have a really clean, defined line, then it'll break on that line. So he had the jacks in there creating that line.
I can get it on the snack seat. You feel good? I can't tell, so.
So I think they need to make sure that they're on that hole. If they put it and they covered that hole, then the air has no way to get out or in. So I think they may have been checking to make sure that they're aligned correctly. There it is. And the challenge, of course, is you want to do it quickly. So if it's out for too long, especially when it's got those attachments, and if those have cooled off too much, when it goes back into the furnace and gets hot again, sometimes those will just shatter.
Awesome, thank you.
So it's all a matter of working just the right speed, just the right temperature. So John is trying to look in there and make sure that the alignment is where they need it.
I think it's going to be more than adequate.
John, you're scaring the people.
Yeah. No, it's just in case. Yep.
You want me on this still, or?
Well, okay for now. Yeah, we got it for now. All right.
Thank you.
We don't need to close this or anything yet, do we?
All right.
No, we don't close it.
Yeah. So we just need to add the arms, right?
How are we doing? Questions? So the question is, how do we get it off after, so we put it on a different pipe, right? So basically, it's going to be the same thing. You may have noticed John, cooled off the connection point when he was putting that putty on, he made a line. He held his jacks and he made like a line.
I think we do the arms.
And so he'll chill that deliberately. He'll put a drop of water. So you're creating kind of a fault line. You're creating a space. Glass is strongest when it's round. Round glass is really comfortable. Any kind of angle, whether it's a point out or a point in, the glass doesn't like. It wants, just like, you know, any liquid it's naturally like curved or flat. So
I'm figuring that out right now.
when he creates that crease, he's giving it a guideline. He's drawn a circle and it's saying crack here. And as long as his heat is right, he puts a small drop of water. It creates a tiny crack, one tiny little crack. And then he'll hit it. So you see him, that last shot is always bang, bang, bang as they break everything off the pipe because it's a shock. So you've created the fault line. You've told it where to break. You've started the break with a tiny bit, and then you whack it gently, usually, to break it off of the piece. And that's one of their like favorite montages on Blown Away is that right before, like when the time is almost up, you see everybody whack, whack, whack on the pipes because that's the break off. Is like you're taking it off of the punny. You've chilled the spot between the piece and the punny. You chill it, and then it pops off. Hopefully, you know, none of the punty goes with your piece, and none of your piece stays with the punty. If you've got all your heat right and a good line. So they've got, I think, at least 5 other parts in the garage that they're going to start pulling those parts out and adding them on.
I had like a brick in there. A brick? Yeah, that we can like set this on. What temperature? That's a right. Yeah. I just need to get a brick in there so I can.
So I talked earlier about heat.
What about this?
Right now you can see Minhi's just like brushing around. She's heating a spot, but then she keeps coming back down to the feet because no one wants cold feet. So she keeps going back because those feet are sticking out of the mass. The whole mass of bunny is holding its heat pretty well, but those feet just stick out. And so those are prone to cooling off faster because they're not tucked into the body. So you'll see, she'll keep going back and just giving those a little extra polish with the torch to keep the heat in it.
Did you get it?
Oh, dudes, Instagram. So we're getting so close to 10,000. If you follow us on Instagram.
Okay.
73? There are 73 of you here tonight. I know there are. If you guys all followed us on Instagram, we would hit 10,000 tonight, and then that would like memorialize this evening forever. So if you follow us, raise your hand. We'll come give you a raffle ticket. Go, Jessica, go. It's like, oh, then I'll have to get up. Thank you guys so much. We are really close. And if you guys all just get on the STL glass, yeah? Yeah, STL glass, like STL St. Louis glass. And don't worry, we have more raffle tickets in the back. We'll go get them if we need to. I know I've got 75 tickets.
All you gotta do is just short flash and bring it over to me.
Yeah, you want me to rest it on the bed?
Yeah,
Just underneath me. Okay.
I don't have John and Minhi's Instagram in front of me, but you should follow them too, if you don't already.
Still on next flash. Still on next flash.
All right, so now we're getting ready to put on
When you come back, can you hold it down?
next
The hot spot
piece.
facing down.
So Gavin is
Hot
at the
spot down.
garage. And so the garage has a hotter spot and a cooler spot. And so he's
All right,
holding
Gavin.
it way over to the side, right in front of the flame where it's nice and warm to sort of preheat it. And then he'll flash it in the glory hole. If he goes in there too long, it'll get melty and flatten out. So he's got to be really careful about how long it stays in there. And then again, John had to preheat those grabbers because if those grabbers were cold, they could crack the glass. And then he picks that piece up and then he's just going to really precisely place it And then our bunny goes back.
Yeah. Like this? Oh, yeah.
All right, guys, we need 44 if you don't have your phones out yet. And Jessica's coming back with more tickets. Don't worry. She'll be back. Oh, so I will
We'll bend it.
if you hold on to your tickets for a few minutes, I don't want you to miss the action. Right now, the bin is over there, but we'll bring it up here so you can put them in the bin here. I will send one of my minions. Do I have a minion who's willing to go get the, will one of you minions go get the, All right, so you guys hold on to your tickets for the minute. We're gonna bring it to you. We'll walk by and you guys can drop them all in. It's like the collection plate, yes. The collection vase.
I gotta get it hot.
So I have a question. Are certain colors harder to work with? Absolutely. So some colors just don't move. Some colors, like you'll put the color on there and then your piece, like you're blowing your eardrums out and it just won't inflate. Like they're so, and then some colors, like you go in the furnace and it melts into a puddle. And you don't always, until you've experimented with color a long time, you don't know which it's going to be. And the hardest thing is to try to work with two of those colors on the same piece. So you'll have a soft color and a stiff color, and you'll make maybe like an encalmo bowl. Encalmo is where you have like two stripes, right, like of color. And if you accidentally don't really think it out and you put a stiff color on one side and a soft color on the other and you go into the furnace to reheat, then you've got one part that's just like waving and floppy and one part that won't move at all. And it's really challenging. So every color is different. Until you work with it, you don't know. Like there's not a rule. Like it's not all greens are soft and all yellows are not. It's not like that. Because so the chemistry behind glass color is really fascinating. The way that the color happens is there are metal oxides that they add to the glass in very, very small percentages. And those metal oxides change the way the glass moves, or the way the light moves through the glass. And so they can determine whether the glass is going to be transparent or opaque, and also what color it will appear. So some colors might be made, you might have a green that is like a copper oxide and one that's an iron oxide. And you might have something that has some cobalt in it. And all of those metals have different melt temperatures and different properties. And so just because it's blue doesn't mean it's intrinsically going to be soft, because it might be a blue made with this or that or the other, because different oxides can all produce similar colors. So most really old glass you look at is green. You look at all the old soda bottle glass, it's all green.
Do you want to work?
And that's because iron, which is everywhere, that's why everything rusts, right? There's just iron everywhere. And iron makes green glass. And they couldn't figure out for the longest time how to, because glass is basically made of sand.
Less high.
And the sand always has little bits of iron, because there's just iron everywhere. So making clear glass was like figuring out how to get quartz or sand that didn't have any iron and purifying that to get it really clear.
And try not to burn me.
Don't burn yourself.
Well, or burn other people.
Don't burn other people either.
He has to teach me tomorrow.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, a lot of these are going to be your students, so keep them in one piece. So it's glass. One of the challenging things, of course, is heat.
Already learning.
Right? Not just heat management, but pain management.
I'm going to try to avoid
Because when you get too close to something that's like, it doesn't start moving till it's 1,000 degrees. So he's like 2.5 inches.
You want to get ready? We're going to go on the next heat after, not this flash, after the next flash. All right, flash.
So he's 2.5 inches from something that's over 1,000 degrees. Usually we don't wear gloves.
Yeah.
We work fast and we try really hard not to touch the glass. But sometimes when you're doing something like this, you have to stay in there and get something precise. And so you will see people wearing gloves when they're placing parts or sometimes when they're making specific cuts. The drawback is we lose dexterity. So as soon as you put on a glove, like if you think you go out in the winter and you try to get your car keys out and you're wearing your gloves, no, you grab your gloves and you take them off and you get your car key and you do your thing and you put your glove back on. We can't do that because the thing that we're doing that requires the dexterity also requires a glove. So you have to kind of learn how to...
we're going to go on after this next flash. Go ahead and flash.
I'm going to be quiet for a minute because they're yelling things at each other and I don't want to add to the noise.
We'll just yell louder.
Oh, well, okay, let's do it then. All right, it's on. Just kidding. I don't have anything that I need to tell them that desperately.
Hold off on the fluffy. All right, Gavin.
I'm gonna go hot side down and then
Yes,
flip.
please. Yep.
All right, we've got touchdown. The eagle has landed.
All right, flash.
Awesome. So it's so you gotta remember, like, they're picking this up with a little metal tong thing and it's moving around on this
The
plate
little thing is
and
stay
everything's
calm.
1,000 degrees, right? So
The head's gonna be
now
great.
one of the cool things about hot
It'll
glass is it's not brittle yet. So a lot
No
of
worries.
the times when we drop things, they
I'll
survive.
carry it over and give it to MiNHi.
Not all the time though. So, but sometimes, like the
I'm
other
gonna take
day,
the putty
one
off
of our
first.
glass blowers
Yeah, you
was
can do it
making
on the
ornaments,
back.
and he
Push it in
knocked
right
one
now?
off of the stand. We put it on a
Alright.
stand and we put the loop on it.
No.
Well, he knocked it off. It made it 4 bounces before
Flip.
it broke.
I can
Bump,
try.
bump, 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 smash. So, but because it's hot, when it's hot, it's kind of springy and elastic, not stretchy, but like it just sort of bounces along. And it's not what you would think of as glass. Hot glass is a different beast. It's not this brittle, sharp thing. It's this kind of like sturdy, rugged thing.
I'll pull
Until
the
it's
ball
not.
back out.
All right, so I think we've still got ears. We've
A head.
got a head. He's got to get a head. He'll get his head, he'll get his ears, and then he's got some flowers. And right now, John is just kind of fine-tuning
Head's next.
exactly where he wants him to be nicely balanced, have his shoulders and his arms at the same spot, so he's just going there and tuning it up. Meanwhile, Tom has
You wanna
jumped in with
bunny
a
it?
torch at the back because
Okay.
John is really focused on the next step.
Flip.
What's the next thing that's going to go on?
Flip.
Let's make sure this one's ready and let's get ready for the next one. But that punty, even though it's sleepy and it has an indicator light, that punty needs to stay warm enough to hold onto the piece.
I think it'll be fine.
So Tom is keeping some heat at the back, just making sure that
I
those
haven't looked
feet
at it
stay
for a
warm,
second.
making sure that all the bits, all the parts that don't have that body heat close to them are staying warm.
Flash.
Sometimes on larger pieces, you'll have like 3 people with torches and 2 people with paddles,
You wanna pick it up
and you
on a
start
bunny?
running out of room for everybody. The paddles are used to shield because there's a lot of heat. As they're getting in there, we'll put a piece
we
of
don't
wood
have gloves.
between the hand and the glass the best we can.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
I was thinking
So the question is,
glove it
how do
on.
they know it's going to stand straight?
Yeah.
And
Got Kevlar mitts, I don't know.
I don't really know the answer to that. Math and wizardry, probably. The other thing is, we can, when the piece is finished, if it doesn't stand perfectly, and often what they'll do when they put this away, often artists will have a tray of sand or a tray of fiber frax, which is like a fiber blanket that's in there that they're going to lay it down on its side. Because what can happen is when you put it away, it could still be a little bit soft, and it might have been standing up, and then it leans slowly over, and then it freezes like this. So they're going to put it in the closest
You want to take a look?
place they can, and then we can't always grind it when it comes back out. If it's a small adjustment, We can take it. We've got a flat wheel that we grind on. They don't show you this part because it's not as exciting, where we spend an hour and a half just taking the piece on a grinding wheel in little circles until it sits at the right angle. So we've got ways we can adjust it after the fact. Now, if you've been sculpting for 15, 20 years, you can probably eyeball it pretty darn good. So my guess is, they know how long those legs need to be, and they know how much that tip needs to be to keep all of the weight equally distributed over the legs. But that can be a real challenge of sculpture. Sculpture is tricky that way. And it's another great question that we can ask them once the piece is in the box. I'm hesitant to.
Yeah. Could also
That,
it's fine.
Yep.
apparently I have a little feedback, so we'll see if it comes back or if it lets me talk. So much fire. You have to be a little bit in love with fire to be in here, just a little. So again, if this looks like fun, if you've always dreamed of being a glass blower, it'll probably take you a couple of years before you can apply for Blown Away. You're probably going to need, the newest people you see on there probably still have 3 years of experience. But we got some really great teachers here. So we can get you up to speed. So you could probably apply, not for this coming season, but maybe 2 seasons out. You could be the next star.
We need some Kevlar gloves.
Our classes, we will be resuming classes in February. We're kind of breaking for the holiday, but we will be resuming classes. We have our class list set. Our next Glass 1 class, so if you haven't done glass at all, our next Glass 1 Hot Shop class. Oh, that's right. So, see, she tells me things and I forget. So our next Glass 1 class will be starting in February.
Do you have anything with fingers?
And if you're here tonight and you're interested in that class, the first 3 people who sign up and take a flyer from me to sign up have the opportunity to receive a 5% off coupon. I have them here in my hands, so you can stop and see me about that if you're interested in that class. It does start February 19th.
Well, then
it meets twice a week.
Then we don't need a glove
and
at all.
Oh, it meets 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Oh, it meets 3
Never mind,
times
we're
a
good.
week.
Okay. Yep.
3 times a week for 2 weeks. So you'll have 6 classes, and in those 6 classes you will learn a lot. You'll learn how to take the glass from the furnace, how to create a basic thing, how to make those lines to break the glass off, and the basic workings of the hot shop. So that starts February 19th. Could be a great gift for that creative, artistic person in your life. So if you want to come up and get one of those, or, volunteer the person sitting next to you to get you one of those. And again, that's available to the first 3 people who sign up for the class. You're welcome. Oh, you do have to sign up online, so you will have to use this. Yes. So you'll use. There's a QR on here, and then you've got a code that you'll enter in the enter your code section. And if you're having any trouble with it, if you want to sign up tonight, that'd be awesome. We can help you through it, or you can just give us a call, and we can help you sign up online, as long as you're in the top 3 there. All right, how we doing? We're warming up the neck.
Hand me that thing.
So there's a.
Let's go on this next flash.
So one of the favorite things here at Third Friday is our fire dancers. And they are here pretty much every third Friday. It will be Circus Kaput this evening. They'll be on at 9:30, and they will be spinning fire in the courtyard, which is right through. There's like a little red door. There's doors from the other side of the studio as well.
You you've got a torch over on that bench.
All right, so John is preparing. So if you were here at the very beginning, I showed you how hot glass sticks to hot glass. It only forms a permanent bond, like a really strong bond, if both of them are really hot. If they're only slightly hot, they'll temporarily stick. That's why we use punties. We don't put the punty on glowy and gooey. We put it on, it'll still stick because it's hot. We put it on just a little bit. For this, they want it to be really hot. They want it to fuse and to become one piece. So John is prepping the neck area, and he's compressing to make it the size he wants, and he's getting that heat built up. Meanwhile, MiNHi has the next piece. She has the head on a punty rod, and she is preparing the spot where it will attach. She's going to prepare that to go on and make sure the heat is right there as well. So she's setting it up to make sure the break off is going to be clean and where she wants it. So the first pieces you saw were smaller bits. They were the legs, and they were pretty small, and it was easy to carry them on a little plate. The head's a little more massive, and she wants to make sure that the heat in it is right. So she's actually picked that up on a rod. That gives her the chance to flash it in and out of the furnace a lot more without the risk of it falling off the plate, and to rotate it and shape it and do everything she needs to make sure that it goes on right with a lot more control than she would have on a plate. To get it hotter on a plate, it would be contacting that plate, and it could stick, because all right, getting ready. Here it goes. Moment of truth. All right. So MiNHi's going to come over. She's holding that straight up. The nose of the bunny is pointing at the floor right now. And John is going to figure out just once it touches, it's there. The glass won't let go. So you got to touch down at the right spot. There it is. It's a nail-biting moment, because if it gets too close too soon and it touches, then when you try to pull it away, it'll just make a string and a goober sort of flies out of it. And you try to put it back, and the glass is cooled and it won't go back. And you end up with, like, this is how I sculpt. Something really wonky and weird and funky, whereas they got him just right. And so now they can adjust a little bit. They want to make sure it's really on there. First of all, because visually, you don't want him to look like his head was attached. You want him to look like it grew there. That's his real head. It's not a Franken bunny. It's the bunny as he grew. So just getting it nice and set in. And that was one of the reasons why John was preheating that whole neck area, so that it was soft enough that they could make those adjustments and move it in and out to make it look really like a natural connection. And of course, it's added onto the outer edge, which means our leverage, even though the head itself was maybe like 2 or 3 pounds of glass, it feels a little bit more than that, because all right. I left you guys on it because I was trying to figure out that feedback, and I'm not sure where it's coming from.
I think without his ears, he looks like a woodchuck.
Woodchucks are cute too. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck? So I have a question about why he torches it, but then puts it back in the glory hole. So if he doesn't put it in the glory hole, then those toes and those hands are going to get cold. So the glory hole flashes are not necessarily even about what he's doing right now, but about all the other pieces, right? So he's got to maintain the heat in the punty. He's got to maintain the heat in the feet and the arms. And pretty soon he's going to also have to maintain the heat. So he could just torch the section he's sculpting and sculpt, and torch it and sculpt. And he could do that 3 or 4 times. But then when he went back into the furnace, other parts would be too cold and would crack. So the flashes right now are not necessarily to build up more heat where he torched, but to maintain heat everywhere else. I know you guys have your hands full, but if either of you has your mic on and wants to mute it, we're getting a little feedback. When you can, like not a priority at all. These people look like they can handle a little static for the sake of art, right?
What'd you say?
Nothing. I was just saying that we were getting some feedback from one of the mics and I can't tell which one. If your mic was muted, then it wasn't yours. I turned mine off and I was still getting it, but maybe it's MiNHi's. I don't know. But I keep getting feedback, so. But we're good. You guys are doing awesome. I said you guys are doing awesome. It looks amazing. That's what I said. So I have a question over here about when we have something that breaks. So like I told a little story about an ornament that we dropped and it bounced and it broke. So we can only recycle the glass that doesn't have color. So once we have color in the glass, it can't, if we put it back in the tank, then everyone gets a little bit of that color, right? And since all of us are independent artists and we're all really cranky and we get grumpy when we pull blue streaks out of the furnace, we have to put only clear glass in. So like the piece she just cut out there is not reusable. Now we do, a lot of us recover as much as we can. So we'll actually take those pieces sometimes. We might have something that was really complicated to make. So if you look out in the gallery, you'll see pieces that are made of cane, where it's like these beautiful stripes that might twist around in circles, and sometimes we'll have to cut pieces of that off, and we'll keep those and reuse them and make paperweights or small things out of them. But if it's something that isn't very complicated and doesn't have a pattern that's going to be pretty later, we usually just let it go. So that is, that glass is waste glass. All right. So right now, they're adding a little bit of extra color to the surface. So they're using powders, which is the glass is crushed up really, really fine. And so this is where you can start to add some layering and some depth to the color with these fine, fine layers of color that they're using a sifter. So MiNHi's got a little sifter, and she's just sifting that powder over specific areas of the bunny. And it can really help to, especially when you've put two parts together, it can really help sort of blend that line and make those colors really work well together. Turn it up just a little bit. Like a little louder. We'd turn it down to see if that helped. You can go up a little bit because I don't think I'm having to yell. That's better. Thank you. It's still staticky, but it's that one. So she's just going in. So John takes it in and gets it hot enough that that glass is just going to lightly stick. And sometimes they'll put it on and then brush half of it off. Oh, we never found them a tray. And so then when, because that glass is so fine, when John goes back into the glory, it's going to melt in almost immediately because it's a really thin, really light coating, and it's just going to blend right down into the surface. Now, depending on how fine a powder they're using and how long he puts it in there, sometimes you can achieve like a velveteen sort of a look to it if you're putting on a slightly chunkier frit. Any of those crushed colors we call frits. But it's a nice blending agent, and it gives it a lot more depth when you have these subtle little transitions where the color's a little thicker or a little thinner. So I haven't really told you guys about the Del Mar Maker District yet. While they're sifting powder, they'll do that a couple of times probably. I'll let you know that here at Third Degree, over the last few years, we've got a few new neighbors. And we have a district developing here that's all about making things. So we're calling it the Del Mar Maker District. And that includes us. You guys know about us because you're here. But we also have our neighbor across the street, Made. Made is a worker space where you can really like fabricate almost anything. So you want to make a little robot, you want to make a little personal aircraft, you want to make a hoverboard, you want to make a quilt, you want to make a leather jacket, you want to make really almost anything you want to make. There's a full metal shop, a full wood shop. There's a fibers and fabric shop. They've got a long arm quilter, which is amazing. If you're a fiber person, it's fabulous. And they are about a block down on the other side. And then Craft Alliance, if you're a St. Louis native, you probably know about Craft Alliance. They've been in the loop for about 30 years. And they recently moved down here on Del Mar with us. And so the three of us are currently the district, but we also have some other really exciting things coming in. We've got some eateries that will be opening soon, and a lot of really cool stuff is happening in the district. You can find information on that on the Del Mar Maker District's on delmarmakerdistrict.org, or check our social media. We share a lot of stuff about the DMD. But we share their posts, right? Like if someone, kind of, maybe. So anyway, it's, as the district grows, there'll be more events and more cool stuff happening. So in addition to Third Degree, you can check out the Maker District for information on what's happening. So I don't know if you got a chance early on. Did they get to show you the pre-made little pieces that they did? All right, so one of the things that John, I had never heard of this, but when they got here, they were telling us there's this technique that's fairly new and experimental called the freeze and fuse. So the fused glass is glass that has gone into a kiln and been melted together, multiple pieces that melt together. So they're taking basically powdered glass like they're using for layering onto the pieces, getting it wet and making it into like a slurry, putting it in a mold and freezing it. And then it turns out if you put it in the kiln as ice, frozen, and you heat it up until it's suffusing temperature and cool it down, it maintains its shape. It maintains fine details. And so they've got some flowers and some gears that they pre-made. And now they're heating those up and applying those on the surface. So there's some little red gears. And I don't know if they're putting the flowers on or just the gears. But I'll walk by and I can kind of show you the detail level that those have. So those little elements are being applied onto the surface. And they're just going to be surface decorations. But they will, as it goes into the furnace, those are going to kind of fuse in and become one with the bunny. So he's a slightly mechanical bunny. Steampunk. So those pieces, because he's putting those pieces on, we talked a little bit, I mentioned order of operations, right? What do you put on first? They didn't want to put that piece on before the head because they had to get it really hot to put the head on, and they would deform those pieces. But they don't want to put the ears on before they put those on because the ears are going to be really prone to getting cold because there's these long, thin things, right? So they have to really think about what they put on and in what order. Because if you go in the wrong order, it's a lot less stable. So these, because they're going to be hugging tight up right against the bunny and his most warm part, they'll be really safe because they don't actually like protrude and stick out. But things like handles or legs are always a little more dangerous. So you'll hear the gaffer say, go in after this flash, go in after this flash. Flashing, of course, is when they're just taking it in to make sure it's not too cold. They're not trying to get anything hotter. They're trying to maintain temperature. So that's what flashing is. All right, so MiNHi's got one of her flowers on the plate. And she's got a spot ready for it. She's going to torch it a little bit to make sure the piece has enough heat at the base of the flower and on the bunny's little behind there. Awesome. So that's one. And it looks like we got some more flowers going on in there. I think they might have had a petal come off earlier and they're putting it on now. Little repair. So she's got to make sure that the part where it's going to go to has enough heat to receive it and make a good bond. So she wasn't quite hot enough yet in the spot that she's going to go to. So she sent John back to the garage to keep it warm. All right, so John's going to just give that a quick flash to make sure that the surface of that piece is warm enough. And then MiNHi will grab it with her tweezers and she'll squish it right into that place that she preheated for it to go and get it reattached. So they talked earlier about whether they should fix the flower ahead of time or whether they should do it like on the piece, and they decided that the right order of operations was on the piece. So at this point, between the fuse pieces and all the bits and everything that they started this morning, we have quite a few hours in this piece. We're coming up on 2 hours of hot work here. And you can really see it taking shape. It's looking really good. So now you can see how long this has taken, and when you think about those timelines that they have on the show, right? They don't get that long. You don't have time to break anything. Like, they're giving them a 4-hour window. All of this is already over 4 hours. So it's a real challenge. All right, that's 2. I think there's just one more in there. And then we got some ears. And then that's it. And then that's it. And then we just have to, like, that sleepy punny has to do its job at the right time. And then it'll be golden. Then they just have to name it. Then you'll have to name him. So he'll be Sleepy, the bunny. Which is what I kept hearing was Sleepy Bunny, not Sleepy Punny. So usually we want to even out the heat as much as we can. We don't, when we do finish it and we put it in the box, we want everything to be a uniform heat. Anywhere where there's heat irregularities, where there's a hot area and a cold area, there's a potential for the area between them to be stressed because they're not going to shrink at the same rate. And so there'll be some movement in there that is not like ideal. So what we want is, you'll see at the very end of a piece like that, you'll see torching various spots and trying to make sure that nothing is too hot, nothing is too cold, and everything's just like that Goldilocks perfect temperature, and it's all even and uniform. So once MiNHi gets all of the pieces placed, and they get those ears on, they'll probably have a little bit more just evening out, making sure all of those joints, especially when you've done a hot joint like that, where you've torched one part and made it a significant temperature change from the part right an inch away from it. You want to make sure those have had time to like kind of even out. And we're getting there. So you probably still have time to get one more entry by, if you can stand leaving for a second, grabbing another drink. So the question was, when the piece is done, how long does it take till someone can take it home? And that's a great question. So depending on the size of the piece, it might have a different annealing schedule. The larger the piece, the longer the schedule. Here, most of our work anneals for about 18 to 24 hours, which means it wouldn't come out till tomorrow night. We're closed on Sunday and Monday. If the piece comes out on Tuesday, we'll have to check it over, make sure there's no cracks, nothing that needs to be repaired, make sure that it stands up. And so I would think the earliest we would really have it ready for the winter might be around this time next week, because we'll want to make sure that everything, and then they will probably want to show some parts of that to their class this weekend, as well as while they're here working next week. They may want to reference that piece. So it could be, the soonest I would think would be Friday, but we won't absolutely know that until we get the piece back out. But yes, typically if we make a piece in the shop here, we're, like as an independent artist, when I make something, I can usually get it in the gallery sometime in the next 3 days. So some of the work out there is really hot and fresh. And we do, this time of year, we try to get it out there as quick as we can for you, so you can buy mom that perfect thing, because it's right there. She'll love it, that one in the front. I love that view on the screen right now. He's kind of looking at you guys. They were working on his head this morning, and those eyes are really tricky. Getting the eyes to be the same size and the same position and have like that same expressive look to them, and not, you know, one of them's a little higher to where he's just a little derpy. He's adorable. Intense. He's got an intense bunny stare. They have assured me once he has ears, the adorable factor is going to be like 10 times higher. So I'm really excited to see that, because he's already pretty stinking adorable. Once they put those ears on, they're going to have to get it in the box. So it looks like she's starting to be for the ears. Yeah. I think so. So we're just prepping those spots for the ears, making sure everything's nice and ready. And that's the last thing we got in the box, I think. So MiNHi's got it in that little warming area. If you look at her, she's holding it way over to the left. That's where the burner comes in. It's the hottest part. So she's just making sure that ear is nice and warm. And the ears are really long, so they're a little tricky. John's preheating his grabbers. And she'll take a quick flash on the ear. Gavin's bringing the bunny back. John's ready for it. So now right at first, that ear is going to be real soft and moving because that spot it's joined to is super hot and that glass is really soft. So John will have to take a minute and work with it kind of back and forth until it sets up. There it is. And now this is where it gets tricky because that hole is only so deep, right? There's a back wall. So he wants to make sure he gets in there far enough that the punty stays hot, but not so far that he runs the ears into the wall at the back of the furnace. So they're pretty much maxing out how big they can go on this particular furnace with that ear. So MiNHi's got the second ear, and she's preheating. And you can see the team, it was MiNHi and John right at the beginning, the two of them kind of like sort of lazy back and forth, and now we've got, you know, kind of 5 people on the team at this point and a cameraman. So they're just checking in, making sure that they've got their timing right. John wants one more flash, I think, to make sure he's got that ear where he wants it and got the spot ready. All right. So now John's getting that placement and angle just where he wants it. Yeah, that cuteness factor definitely just kicked up. Until I'm like holding my breath. You guys are all like, we're all just like, it's the scariest moment when it's almost there. I always worry. I always want to be like, don't get too emotionally invested. It's glass. It's still glass. Anything can happen. But it's impossible not to fall in love with it. All right. So now, like I said, they've got him assembled. Now they've got to just even out that heat. And then we got that punny needs to do its job at the right time. So he might make a few more little adjustments here to get the ears just where he wants them. So he's really got to make sure he's maintaining heat on the tip of the ears. You see the torch keeps going back to the tips. Because the further away it is from that main body of heat, the quicker it cools off. So you can see he's just going around and hitting all those little appendages, like hitting the fingertips and hitting the toes, making sure everything has enough heat.
Let me torch that bottom before you guys go.
All right, here we go. So one little walk, and then he'll get another flash, and then into the box soon. Who's catching? We need a catcher. Yeah, get a jacket and a hood so you got time in there, man. So when we put it away, I might have told you 950 degrees. Reaching into that oven, if any of your skin is exposed and you twitch, then the gaffer gets really cranky with you because you want to place this gently and precisely. So we've got Tom getting geared up with a nice heat-resistant jacket, big Kevlar gloves, and a face shield because we don't want him to be placing the bunny and his beard to catch on fire because as dramatic as it would be, and it would be like, the first scene they showed on the Netflix special, but the flaming beard. But we want him to have lots of time to place that nice and precise. And then those of you who are down by the annealers might need to take a little step back because there will be a big blast of heat coming out of that oven. So John said 2 more flashes. This is a really beautiful piece of glass, and I'm really wishing I'd had a plant in the audience who I gave the right ticket to at this moment, because it would look so good in my house. Alas. So there's so much in here. There's that fuse, I showed you the little fuse pieces. Like just that alone is so much like thought and time and all the little parts. And you guys, I wish we could get everyone even closer. And I wish that we could develop photography that could handle hot things and bright things so you could really see the level of detail. It's so beautiful. Like there's the little spots where his whiskers are and his little face. And he's got the sweetest little like mouth. So you guys might get, as they walk toward the annealer here, you might get a last little look at him. But we will definitely have pictures and post pictures for you guys to see on our socials, because, all right, so we asked it earlier how they get this off, so they're gonna put a little drop of water right at that joint, and then it's gonna be that crack that you see at the very end. We've only got one bench breaking off. All right. All right. So, thank you guys so much for staying with us for the demo and seeing this amazing piece. I'm going to hand you back over to our co-founder, Doug Auer, who is going to draw the winning tickets. So please do get your tickets out and have them ready, because we will go pretty rapid fire. You want to be ready. You have to be present to win. We will give you enough time to read your ticket, but then, you know, we will have to move on till we find a winner. So have your tickets out and ready, and I will pass you to Doug.
I don't like being tethered. All right, Jessica, dump those things out. So, you guys were awesome. That was a full-blown experience. We've never captivated people for that amount of time. So thank you, John and MiNHi, one more time. So I already asked, like most of you have been here before, you know the drill. We're gonna light these tickets on fire. I need some hot glass, hurry, quick. MiNHi and John don't know the drill. Guys, we light our raffle tickets on fire. Oh, but they're in. Like, look, they're like, we will participate. Okay, thank you. These are true glass artists. So this is hands down the most amazing raffle prize we've ever had. Just drool, yeah, drizzle.